What is a public health emergency? The World Health Organization definition of a public health emergency of international concern is an extraordinary event which is determined to constitute a public health risk to other states through the international spread of disease and to potentially require a coordinated international response. And that's what we're in at the moment. It's now been defined as a pandemic. And that means that it's spreading with not just from where the original origin of this virus was, which was in China, but now it's spreading in other states as well. What are the types of public health emergency? This is just giving you a bit of background. There are four main types of public health emergency. Pandemics. These are known as either zoonotic, transferable from animals to humans, or non-zoonotic, so non-transferable from animals to humans. Temperature extremes, hazardous chemical or bacterial release, and local communicable disease outbreak. So just to quickly go over what those are. Pandemic risks that can cross from animals to humans. Influenza being one, either bird flu, swine flu, Spanish flu, we're all hopefully familiar with those. Ebola, if you remember that from a few years ago. Rabies is another one, and coronavirus, which is what we're facing at the moment. These can be difficult to treat as we do not have natural immunity during the initial transfer period, which is what we're finding at the moment. Influenza, coronavirus can be transported by airborne droplets of phlegm or saliva when someone coughs, sneezes, or talks. It can also remain on hard surfaces for a substantial amount of time. Droplets enter a recipient's mouth or nasal passages and infect a new host, and that's how it's transmitted. So stopping spread means breaking the chain of infection, which is precisely why we're all on the web tonight and not meeting in St Margaret's Hall. Government phased response to such an outbreak. Well, we've been talking about the containment phase up for till about last week. Then the delay phase, which is now kicking in, and then there's the mitigation phase later on. The research is ongoing, as you'll be aware, across the world. Different institutes trying to find ways to combat this at the moment. Non-zoonotic pandemics, quite quickly. Animal pandemics can still be very disruptive to people's lives. The foot and mouth outbreak in 2001, I'm sure many of us remember that, devastated livestock farmers and virtually closed down wide areas of the UK countryside. All UK local authorities have an animal health plan that they will activate during a non-zoonotic pandemic. And for non-zoonotic pandemics that are not a risk to human health, then DEFRA will take a lead in managing this crisis. Temperature extremes. Estimated 18,200 additional deaths in the UK during the winter of 2013-14 due to the cold snap. Over 760 additional deaths in the UK during a 9-day heat wave in 2013. Public Health England runs a heat health watch and a cold health watch, depending on the time of year. And that differs from the Met Office weather warnings as not UK-wide and tailored for the health sector. Now, the reason I'm mentioning these is that obviously, whilst we're dealing with the coronavirus at the moment, if we suddenly get coronavirus mixed in with temperature extremes, if we go into, say, June, July, and we start getting temperature extremes as well, then that could have an even greater impact on those who are self-isolating, who have got underlying health issues. So it could be a double whammy we're looking at, and we need to plan accordingly. Hazardous chemical or bacterial release. This could be accidental, such as in industrial accidents, road traffic collisions involving a vehicle, or malicious deliberate release, as we saw in Salisbury, or terror-related. Tokyo siren attack is an example of that. There is standard signage to denote hazardous material, which can be found on packaging, vehicles, and places of storage. So if you see any of those and you've seen a vehicle having an accident, or you can report that through to the fire service, and they'll know how to deal with that. So, final one here, local communicable diseases. So these local communicable diseases are outbreaks which are not pandemics, but can be cause severe local disruptions, say to schools, nurseries, care home closures, etc. Examples of this are mumps, measles, legionnaires, meningitis. Most of these diseases can be controlled by a locally organised vaccination programme to raise the level of protection in the local population. Okay, so that's just a bit of a background about public health emergencies, just to give you an idea of where pandemics sit in amongst all the other types of public health emergencies. So, who's in charge of what? You've probably seen a lot of these people, these organisations mentioned on the news. So, Public Health England, they lead on providing advice and guidance to the general public and government in England. And obviously, Wales and Scotland have their own versions of that. NHS England will coordinate the NHS local health trusts on how they might manage hospital resources. So they sort of at the sharp end, managing hospital beds and intensive care units, that kind of thing. Local authority director of public health. So that for us in Bradford and Avon, they're based in Wiltshire Council, has the statutory responsibility for the health of their local population. Other voluntary organisations can be called in to assist areas as necessary by request to the Local Resilience Forum. If you've never heard of the Local Resilience Forum before, not surprised, that is where all the various different emergency services and responder agencies sit and meet, and they have they come up with plans to how to deal with major incidents, and things like pandemics are very high on their list. So they are having lots of godly huddles at the moment, working out how to manage resources in the best possible way to meet what we're currently facing. So, local level pandemic response, just a bit of a diagram just to try and explain where we kind of fit. Tier 1 support, so that's the severest, those who are severely ill, need major hospital treatment, need to go into intensive care units. They'll be treated by NHS and maybe specialist agencies, partners. So the likes of the British Red Cross might be going into hospitals and providing support and assistance. In terms of how that's being organised outside of the hospital, so the local authority director of public health and the NHS trusts have a responsibility in assisting with that. So as volunteers, we don't get involved with that. Tier 2 support, keeping local services operating, care homes, retirement developments, surgeries, pharmacies, local shops. For quite a lot of that, that might be the town or parish council community emergency volunteers or other volunteer groups going in assisting. Tier 3 support, minor cases treated at home and with assistance of friends and family, self-organising community groups. So these are the street and neighbourhood spontaneous volunteer groups that are now beginning to crop up across Bradford and Avon and other communities across the country, and they have a vital role to play. They're the kind of the foundation of our response, if you like, and the rest of the pyramid's built on top of it. So without that, the overall response and how our country deals with this over the next few months is going to be severely tested. So town councils will try to offer as much support as possible and act as a hub for the community within their resources. And you heard Dom, the leader of Bradford and Avon Council, mention at the beginning of this presentation that we've just put a page on our website, which you can sign up to say either you're interested in helping with the community emergency volunteers, or you've already set yourself up a street or neighbourhood spontaneous volunteer group and register that with the town council. So we've got a link. We understand how many groups are being set up in our community, and then we can give you support and information as much as we know and are able to, and then we can ensure there's not duplication of effort going on. Okay, so so as I say, we're possibly a little bit past most of this at the moment, but I'll run through this slide quickly anyway, and hopefully it might give some ideas to help people who are thinking about setting up. Support local and national public health vaccination campaigns to build immunity in the population. We've been hearing a lot about sort of herd immunity on that all that sort of thing on the telly, but immunity is important within the population to be able to eventually deal with these. Looks like we're going to be having to wait for a vaccine in order to build up that immunity, but that's one thing that maybe we might be asked to get involved with if there's going to be a mass vaccination campaign, maybe assisting at vaccination centres as volunteers, that sort of thing. Encourage those with medical conditions, the elderly and with young children to sign up to utility companies' priority services registers. If you haven't heard of these before, they're a really useful database which the utility companies are statutorily obliged to actually produce. What they do is they take down details of people who are elderly, have health conditions, young children, those kind of things, and they create these databases. So, say if the utilities go out, the lights go out, or power, or whatever it might be, they can prioritize who they send help to. But in the same instance, if there's a time of national emergency, those databases can be used to highlight potentially vulnerable people in the local by to the local authority or local NHS trusts, and then they can cascade that information down if people need assistance. So the information for priority services registers, if you think you know somebody who might benefit from being on one of those, please look at the utility company's websites. They should all be highlighted there. Our local one, SSEN, Wessex Water, has one as well. They both talk to each other, which is good to hear, and they can share information as well. So please push that out to your vulnerable local neighbours. So keep your town and parish council community emergency plan and contact details up to date to ensure they can be relied upon during an emergency. So at Bradford and Avon, you'll be glad to know, does have a community emergency plan, and but there might be some people who have come in from other communities onto this webinar who aren't familiar with community emergency plans. If not, there is plenty of guidance out there, and we have it on our web site, which can help you, but also local resilience forum, like I mentioned previously, they can have information to help you set that up as well. Start getting telephone trees together, local contacts, important contacts who you want to bring together in an emergency, that kind of data. Make contacts with your local public health teams, GPs, to see how you can support them or get training. So if you're starting to set up a group for town-wide, then as a town council or parish council, then if you have a GP surgery in your local community, then get hold of them and see if there's anything that they need in terms of help, and start building up those contacts and networks now. So health emergency, help to issue advice from public health bodies locally to reduce the flow of fake news and the social media echo chamber. You're probably aware, if anyone goes on Twitter at the moment, it's pretty manic out there. So just please do follow the official public health bodies' social media feeds, and take that as what you should be doing. Act as flu buddies. Well, lots of people are doing that already in our community. To those who are frail, elderly, or have to self-isolate, delivering medicines, food, and checking up on them through phone calls. But you may have noticed that on on the bottom right hand side of the slide, there's a card which has been doing the rounds quite a lot on social media. It's a great way of linking into people. If you feel you're more confident with social media, then why not set up a local a group for your street? I'll keep it probably fairly much street based. They get too large, they get a bit unwieldy. Um, so help to staff temporary inoculation centres if required. I mentioned that previously. Hopefully when a vaccine is produced for this, there's probably going to be a mass vaccination program required across the country. And again, that's going to require a lot of hands on deck. So you, as volunteers, that's probably going to be the community emergency volunteers rather than the street volunteers. You might be asked to assist with that kind of work. Not obviously putting needles in people's arms, but making cups of tea, reassuring people, doing that kind of work. Making contacts with your local public health teams, GPs, pharmacies, food stores, to see how you can support them. So in Bradford and Avon, I've been going around the GPs, the pharmacies, food stores, just letting them know that the community emergency volunteers are here, and if they need us, to let us know, and getting our contact details to them, letting us know to phone their town council, so that we can organise and coordinate stuff for them if they want. Some food stores are already beginning to self-organise, which is brilliant. They're helping out their elderly customers, more vulnerable customers, but it may be that some just need that extra bit of support, especially as we go into this next phase where a lot more people are going into lockdown. So just be aware of those services which will need support in the coming months. Find out what local groups might be self-organising, and link into them, and again try and avoid this duplication of effort. We're all very keen to help our community. That's why we're here all this evening. So let's just try and make sure that we're all sort of pushing together and not bashing against each other. So yep, that's just a few community actions, community action response, COVID-19. So 5 things you can do to make a positive difference in your community. Think of others, local online groups, support vulnerable people, share accurate information. So your role after a public health emergency, keep supporting the elderly, vulnerable, who might take longer to come out of self-isolation than the main population. So what might happen is the main population can be told, okay, you can come out now, but that doesn't mean that the other people who might still be um, suffering symptoms or coming out of the coronavirus may still need support. So please be aware that those support networks might need to be in place for quite some time after the main population is allowed to start getting back to what could be described as the new normal. Provide support to the community as individuals, groups and businesses. Seek to recover from the effects of emergency, such as pass on information regarding financial assistance. We've seen quite a lot of packages being announced by the government recently, so please, if we get anything as a town council, we'll obviously pass that on to businesses as we can. Coordinating pastoral care with local churches. I believe there's some local church groups on this webinar now, so yep, it would be great to link in with them. Supporting carers and potentially the bereaved as well. Obviously, people, this is going to be an exceedingly stressful time for everybody, but especially those who are bereaved, those who are caring for people who are sick. So just sort of be conscious of those who have come out of this emergency and who are definitely have lost loved ones through it. Provide data and debriefing evidence to the local director of public health to feed into future planning. Now, this is something we do as community emergency volunteers through our flood work, and it's really important to be able to put that information back in, what things worked, what things didn't work, how did we manage. This is hopefully, certainly as far as I'm concerned, a once in a lifetime event, but So there's a chance to do a lot of learning at the end of this, and help us be able to deal with other emergencies, hopefully not on this scale ever again, but other emergencies. So if we can be providing that data and that debriefing to the public health powers that be, then that's a really helpful way that we can put that learning to good use. So emergency. So most public health emergencies are caused by the transfer of viruses from one person to another, either by direct or close contact or poor personal hygiene. As a volunteer during our public health emergency, you must maintain strict hygiene control. It's obviously going to be impossible to maintain complete hygiene control, but we've got to do what we can, especially with the way that PPE and I mean to say PPE, that's personal protective equipment, things like hand gel, face masks, they're all disappearing off the shelves. So we've got to do what we can with what we can at the end of the day. So if you have a cough, temperature, or other flu-like symptoms, do not respond to a call to help, but instead please self-isolate. It's the best thing you can do if you want to help your community. If you think you've got something, then self-isolate. Go to NHS online in the first instance. Don't phone NHS 111 because they're already getting snowed under. So go on online first. See, they've got various lists there you can go through and help you to do an initial diagnosis, and they'll give you an initial recommendation of what you should be doing. Please do not attend your GP surgery, A&E, or pharmacy if you're feeling terrible and you think you just can't cope with it, or people who are. Then that's the time to dial NHS 111. Then they'll make the decision whether to take you into the hospital or not. So at this stage, what people do not want is big queues of people going in saying, "Well, I'm feeling a bit unwell," and turning up at A&E or the GP surgery. That's the current advice. Good hygiene control. So good hand hygiene is the first line of protection. You've heard it lots and lots, but I will say it again. Wash your hands at regular opportunities with hot water and soap. Alcoholic gels with greater than 60% alcohol content is an alternative, but soap and water is better. And the reason, note that soap doesn't kill viruses, but acts as a solvent to remove the virus from before washing it away, so it gets it off your skin, and then washing it with warm water will then wash the viruses away. So that's how it works. Drying your hands is better with disposable paper towels than hand dryers. So if you're in a public place and using public toilets, try and use hand towels if they've got them, as they dry your hands more quickly. So you're less likely to keep any virus on your hands. In order to avoid transmitting infections through touching various surfaces, use disposable gloves if you have them. So if say we're doing deliveries, we'll try and get hold of disposable gloves, but again, that is subject to the massive demand that's going on at the moment. Face masks. There's been lots of talk about face masks. They can give a false sense of security, although those at high risk will benefit, including those who are sick, self-isolating, and don't wish to transmit those they live with. So basically, if you're living with somebody who has this and they're coughing and spluttering and you're having to sort of be around them, then a face mask can help. But if you're out and about and practicing social distancing, then really a face mask isn't going to help one way or the other. And probably lulls you into a full sense of security and stops you doing the hand washing, which is the most important thing to be doing anyway. Carers and health workers, including volunteers, in constant or regular contact with the sick. So basically people in hospitals and in care homes, they will need to be wearing face masks and that sort of thing. But for the rest of us, it's not such whilst it would be nice, we may have to manage without. So, basic advice: wash your hands for 20 seconds. Use a tissue for coughs. Avoid touching your face. And the reason to avoiding touching your face is that, as mentioned previously, this coronavirus is passed through droplets, which can either enter through primarily through your mouth or your nasal passage, um, or face with dirty hands. That's a way of transmitting it into your body. So, a quick thing on how to wash your hands. I'm not going to run through all that slide, but if you are interested, then obviously you can download this and look through that at your leisure. But the main thing is just be thorough. Make sure you get into all the crooks and crannies between your hands and around your thumbs and things. If we do have gloves, if you do have gloves, then there is a right way and a wrong way to remove the gloves. Because obviously, if you've been wearing gloves, there's a potential for them to be contaminated. Then you need to make sure you take them off in the proper manner. And the proper manner is to take one glove off, so you pinch the top of the glove, and you pull that downwards away from the wrist, turn the glove inside out, basically, so you're trapping whatever germs are on the glove inside the glove. And then you put that glove into your other hand, as you can see on slide 3, and hold that in there, and then you pull the other glove across, again turning that glove inside out. So basically what you're trying to do is trap the contamination inside the gloves, which you can then go and dispose of in a bin as quickly as possible before then washing your hands for 20 seconds. So that's the right way to take off disposable gloves if you have them. So unfortunately, this was a quite difficult slide for a few slides for me to write, but there is the potential for fraud and fraudsters and scammers to be working in our communities, trying to they see this as an opportunity to prey on the vulnerable. So what I've done here is I've put a few points down just to try and provide some guidance to protect yourselves. So if you're out and about working in the community, you're reducing the chance of being accused of doing anything, but also to protect the elderly people as well. So they know that they've got a plan in place to how to potentially pay for shopping or get their prescriptions sorted out. So avoiding frauds and scams. Firstly, as community emergency volunteers, if we're working around the town, we always work in buddy pairs when out, primarily for safeguarding, both for us as volunteers, but also for the people, for the general public as well. Obviously, if you're delivering to your own street or to someone you know, then that's fine. You know, try and find somebody else to pair up with you. But if the community emergency volunteers are going out, we will be going out as buddy pairs, and that's where it comes important in terms of personal hygiene and making sure that we're not cross-contaminating each other if we're working in pairs. Make sure if you're doing shopping or picking up prescriptions from self-isolators that they have paid for the goods, unless you have a previous arrangement such as backs payment. Do not pay with your own money. I'll come on to more about that in a little while. Obviously, if you've already got an arrangement with somebody next door who you always go and do their shopping for anyway, that's fine. This is primarily for people who are strangers, and just trying to make sure that your goodwill isn't abused, and also other people's naivety isn't abused as well. Most online retailers are organising telephone ordering for groceries for those not confident about online shopping. These have been operating on a first come first served basis. Although today you'll have noticed in the news that Sainsbury's are now starting to retain slots for the elderly. I'm not sure how that works. I'm afraid I haven't had a chance to go online and have a look at that, but they are beginning to respond to the issues which we've all seen over the past week or so. Other shops are organising elderly-only sessions first thing in the morning. I believe Iceland has been starting that, although not good for self-isolating. So whilst it's very nice for the old people to be able to get out and not be in the hustle and bustle, it does mean they do actually have to leave their houses. Um, do not let anyone give out PIN numbers or accept offers to get cash out on their behalf, and be wary of strangers asking for money up front. Um, I think I've heard rumours on the grapevine there have been people knocking on doors saying, "Oh, we'll just get you some cash," and making off with cards and PIN numbers and stuff, and never seeing the light of day again. Avoid passing cash due to contamination and potential fraud as well. So if you know the person well, then that's another matter. That's a matter between you and them. But it's using your common sense at the end of the day. Keep your shopper schemes local to neighbours, trusted friends, and family. Obviously, whilst it's great that we're starting to build up this network across the community, um, your elderly neighbours, even though you may not know each other particularly well, the vulnerable neighbours, they at least might recognise your face from sort of walking past every day and saying hello and waving and that sort of thing. So it's using that really kind of very local network to be able to support people. So we aren't sort of calling somebody from the other side of town to come over and do some shopping who they don't recognise at all. So try and build up those close community bonds. So a back scheme. This is just a suggestion. Feel free to take this and work it up as you feel appropriate, however it might work for you and your local community. So if self-isolator has online banking, many people do. Many of the elderly, I appreciate, will not. They won't like that. They can pay the shopper by backs for doing their shopping. So the self-isolator phones the shopper or posts the shopping list on the street's social media page if you've got one. The shopper phones the self-isolator and agrees a ceiling figure for the cost of the groceries, and that's quite important because obviously you don't want to go out and do a load of shopping and then come back and they suddenly say, "Well, that was a bit more than I was expected to pay," or the other way round, they're expecting you to sort of pay X amount and you're only expecting to pay Y. And so agree a ceiling figure for the cost of the groceries first is always a good way just to avoid any nasty surprises at the end of it. The shopper purchases the shopping up to an agreed limit and asks for 2 receipts. The shopping is left on the self-isolator's doorstep by the shopper with one of the receipts and their sort code and bank account number. The self-isolator pays the amount noted on the receipt via BACS transfer to the shopper. So no cash, so reducing the likelihood of cross-contamination or security-sensitive bank account details transferred. Again, as I say, this is very much for those who are quite savvy online and who bank online or are happy to do BACS transfers. So if that's the case, then great. For those who may not be able to do that, phone payments. So if your local shop can take over the phone payments, here is another way. Now, I have been checking with local shops, and currently, whilst Sainsbury's might be doing that with their phone up scheme, I know I was checking with Co-op yesterday, both Co-ops, and I'm not aware of them running this yet, but there might be other shops in Bradford or elsewhere who can take over the phone payments. So basically, the self-isolator phones the shopper, the shopping list, or posts it on social media. The shopper phones the self-isolator and agrees a ceiling figure for the cost of the groceries again. The shopper picks up the shopping from the local store shelves and goes to the checkout. The shopper phones the self-isolator at home and hands phone over to the checkout. Self-isolator gives card details for over-the-phone payment to checkout. Shopper leaves shopping on doorstep with receipts. No cash again, reducing the likelihood of cross-contamination or security-sensitive bank account details transferred. And I think it's important, whilst I know quite a lot of people, especially elderly people, like using cash. As this goes on and they self-isolate more, they're going to be there's a chance of them running out of cash. To try and build in these types of systems would be I think, a more robust system in the long run. But again, it's a recommendation, and you'll have to, in some respects, work it out how best it works for you. But I've put these up as two systems that can offer that protection both to you as the potential shopper and also to the self-isolator as well. So you've got some shopping, or you've got a prescription off from the local pharmacy. How do you go about dropping it off? So 4 golden rules for a safe drop-off. Again, I'm talking about some personal protective equipment here, but you may or may not have that. So I've made allowances accordingly. Have a mask, and either spray your hands with gel or put on a pair of disposable gloves, if available, before getting out of the vehicle. Place the items to be delivered on the doorstep before ringing the bell or knocking on the door, and take at least 3 steps back. And the reason I say 3 steps back is for social isolating, you need to be at least 2 meters away from anybody, just to ensure that there's not cross-contamination. Please don't go inside, because you're much more likely to get within 2 meters of the person who's isolating. If you go inside the house, there's also safeguarding issues. If you go inside somebody's house as well, it's much better to stay outside, from both the safeguarding and also from a health perspective as well. So, having returned to your vehicle, dispose of your gloves in a bin liner, and if you've got treat your hands with hand gel again if you've got it. When you've finished your rounds, if you've before eating and drinking, basically as soon as you get back home, thoroughly wash your hands with hot water and soap for 20 seconds, and safely dispose of your face mask if you have one. So, vulnerable persons doorstep check. It's probably about the only bit of social contact that those who are isolating may have. It may be that you might just want to do that if they've got a porch, do that through their porch door. Always work in buddy pairs if you're working with going to a stranger's house. Have they got enough food? Hopefully they have, because you just bought them some. Or are they warm, cool enough? We're still not we're coming into spring now, but it can be a bit cool in the evenings. So just make sure that they've got enough clothes on, their heating's working, that kind of thing. Do they have enough medicines to last over the next few days? And are friends and family helping them, supporting them, giving them a phone call, that kind of thing. So just a few things, just to bullet points there, just to encourage them to speak to people who are self-isolating. You have to excuse me a moment. I'm just going to grab some water because I can feel my voice going a bit dry. Okay, I mentioned about public health volunteer PPE, or personal protective equipment. At the community emergency volunteer level, we have branded bibs for recognition. So if we're going around doing stuff with knocking on doors of people who may not know us personally, then we have bibs with town council community emergency volunteers on it. So it's pretty obvious where we've come from. even though we've got our bibs on, we would not enter into somebody's house, just for the reasons I mentioned previously. If you've got latex and powder-free disposable gloves, use them. If you've got a disposable face mask and you're doing drop-offs, as mentioned previously, then obviously use them. If you've got access to alcohol-based hand gel, use that. If you're doing quite a lot of this and running around the place, don't forget yourself. Make sure you pack yourself a drink and a high-energy snack of whatever you like, just to keep yourself going. Because if you're running up and down the hill a few times, then you can get a bit dehydrated. So yeah, it just helps to keep you on the move and healthy as well. So triggering a call out, communications. So the town or parish council CV coordinator to provide the local pharmacy, GP surgery, local authority, Director of Public Health with a single phone number that they can be contacted on. So the Wiltshire Council Emergency Planning Team, they have our contact details as community emergency volunteers for the town, and I'm also giving that out to the local pharmacy, GP surgeries as well, so they can get hold of us if necessary. So when you're contacted by health agencies, this is for community emergency volunteer teams, you can implement the stand to procedures. Now, if you're wondering what a stand to procedure is, this links into our communities prepared incident management training. So if you want to find out more about that, please go and have a look at our website. If you're listening in from a different community. For other public health emergencies, you'll be mobilised when required by your local health agency. Street level community groups should pass on a coordinator's contact details to their town or parish council. So we do have a link which will be at the end of this presentation or go to the town council website. I believe that is now live as of a couple of about half an hour ago. Use social media, email, telephone to keep in contact and in order to maintain social distancing. I know everyone's running around going about social media and email, but a lot of people still just prefer telephone calls. So telephones. Yeah, don't spread rumour and gossip, and try and follow and promote the official news sources. That might sound a bit draconian, but quite often these things which start off with rumours can quickly fly around and start worrying and panicking people needlessly. So yeah, let's try and keep sensible about that. A little bit about West Wilts Radio. I don't know how many people on this link are familiar with this. This is an online community radio station providing entertainment and information services for Bradford and Avon surrounding areas. It's currently broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's liaising with all the local services, including the town council and health centre, in order to provide all current and appropriate information regarding the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak, and can and will be updated almost immediately. The management is currently in discussions with Ofcom, seeking authority to move its broadcast to an FM frequency. So that's hopefully just make it a wider availability for one and all. Contact details for broadcasting messages are at the bottom there, but again, this presentation will be online on the council's website, hopefully in the next couple of days. So feel free to look through this at your leisure, and but also just type in westwiltsradio.com and you can get through on that as well. So quick recap, 4 main types of public health emergency. Public Health England lead nationally, NHS England lead hospital response, local authority will lead on local general public safety. Agree your roles beforehand if you can. Build up local street level social networks and link to town, parish or ward wide networks. In our case in Bradford, that's the town council. use correct PPE and equipment if it's available, and maintain good hygiene control. Be aware of scammers and fraudsters targeting your area. For more information, online resources, NHS guidance is there as well. Public health, local authority public health department will issue local pertinent information. Keep listening to local TV and radio for advice. There is another course, if you're interested, FutureLearn, running a coronavirus online course, which is free. And for more information on Communities Prepared, how we support local communities to set up community emergency volunteer teams through their town and parish councils, obviously please go to communitiesprepared.org.uk. Okay, in terms of that link up there, that's the community volunteer sign up form. So if you're setting up a group or you're interested in becoming a community emergency volunteer, then please go to that page and fill in the form there, so we know what you're doing, where you're doing it, and we collate that and build that into the overall picture that Wiltshire Council and the Local Resilience Forum need to understand how to progress this. And for any further queries, obviously, please get in touch.
Hi, I'm Sue Steenberg.
Hi there.
Two-part question. Next door, Bradford and Avon. Can we post particularly the slide regarding payments for shopping on that Facebook page? And second part is, as Bradford and Avon CUVs, can we also help people in other areas? There is a lady in Melksham who needs some shopping, and somebody in Melksham has contacted me about that.
I mean, what I'm suggesting is, and what I've just put up on the screen here, I don't know if you can see that, Sue, is a PDF, which is like a cue card.
Okay.
And what that has is something you can download and print off. And again, we'll get this onto the town council website, so everyone who wants it can print it off. It's just an A4 sheet, which has that helping with safe shopping for those self-isolating. So there are two different ways of doing that, which were in my slides, and also the 4 golden rules for a safe drop-off and the vulnerable person's doorstep check. So it's an A4 sheet, you can print it off, and then you can have that in your car or when you're walking along, just as an aid memoir, or by your phone or whatever it might be, or on your fridge. So it's got the sort of salient points, if you like, of the do's and the don'ts from the presentation for anybody, whether you're a CEV or whether you're a kind of local spontaneous volunteer group.
Okay, and I can share that online, yes?
Absolutely, share it as widely as you like. In terms of helping out other communities, I mean, certainly because we have the vehicle, we're very lucky in Bradford and Avon that we have the vehicle. We certainly can help other sort of parishes around Bradford and Avon itself. What I probably prefer to do is to try and get hold of Melksham Town Council and maybe send these slides over to them and support them with their sort of setting up of their team, and sort of finding out what their ideas are of how they're managing this response as well. Just because we've got to be quite careful in managing our response, because we could end up being being dragged here, there, and everywhere around the county if we're not very careful.
Okay. Any further questions?
Thanks, Mike Roberts. Right.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, how you doing? All right. Paul, thanks very much for that. It was fairly helpful. I think as a town council, we need to get together to get this message out to the more vulnerable people, the people that haven't got social media.
Yes. So that is in hand, Mike. That was discussed today. We convened a communications call today with myself, the mayor, Lydia, and Ian. We will be putting out hard copy leaflets very, very shortly as well. We will be getting a leaflet out, an initial print run of about 2,000 leaflets to be placed in places for people to be picking up when they do their shopping or somebody else's shopping, and also then a print at home option, so we can get people are looking after neighbours, keeping an eye on neighbours. They can put something through the door at the same time as well. So that is being looked at. Obviously, we are very, very aware. Paul captured it very strongly in the presentation. We have a significant proportion of our town which are over retirement age. We have to make sure that we are reaching those very hardest to reach through this period as well. Okay. In that case, Paul, thank you very, very much indeed for sharing the presentation with us, for talking us through it. It's obviously an incredibly important subject for all concerned at the moment, and also some angles in there that I hadn't even considered around some of the risks to volunteers as well as risks to vulnerable individuals. We will continue to take as much action as we can. We're looking at ways to support the most vulnerable members of our community. I've been talking to the town clerk in Bradford and Avon about some of that today as well. We're also having regular calls to make sure we're doing all we can. Paul is obviously an intrinsic part of all of that preparedness. Obviously, the announcement of the school closures tonight has significantly raised anxiety levels in a number of areas as well. We are all going to have to find new ways and probably avail ourselves of the opportunities via social media, via online platforms, including ones like this, to stay in touch as much as we can over the coming months. As a town council, we will do our level best to enable that as far as we possibly can. In the meantime, Paul, thank you once again. Hope you have an enjoyable rest of your evening, everybody, and we will be in touch again soon.